Um, did you have any parting thoughts or any other parting shots that you want to?
No, I think we covered a lot. There's I'm really happy with your questions and your
Thank you.
perspective, and the way you approach an interview is we're very thoughtful, and I appreciate that. I can't say everybody has your level of detail and the respect for the people that they're come on the show. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I can't tell you that's you're really just hitting home right now. Um, I'm thank you. I'm not the best at expressing gratitude or showing gratitude, but man, that really might be one of the best compliments I've received in a long, long time. So thank you, sir. That means sincerely and a large deal to me. So man, I'm humbled by that.
Well deserved.
Man, thank you. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. My guest on this episode of Passing the Torch is former U.S. Navy SEAL and author of And Goliath, the Littlest SEAL's inspirational story about living your biggest life, David Brown, who was the unlikeliest of candidates for the world's most grueling military selection process. Standing just 5'3" tall and weighing 110 pounds, he was unlike any of the others around him who aspired to be SEALs. But through dogged determination and an iron will, he overcame every obstacle that life put in front of him to achieve his dream of becoming a SEAL. David Brown's life has been one of perseverance, tenacity, and achievement. From childhood adventures to love lost and found, to buds, the teams, and an exciting career at NCIS, and then a steady climb to the top echelons of federal law enforcement. And Goliath is his story through military life and what comes after, the good and the bad. Told with raw honesty and unwavering courage, And Goliath is more than just a memoir. It's a testament to the power of perseverance. David's inspirational tale reveals how facing your own Goliaths can lead you to live your biggest life possible. This episode is for anyone seeking inspiration. Without further ado, Passing the Torch with David Brown starts now. First and foremost, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining me, David. I appreciate this, man.
Oh, thank you, Martin. I'm really excited to be on your show.
Why is life great right now?
Life is great because after many years of following what other people thought was success and I thought was success, I finally found happiness in my own life. And I live every day in the moment, and I appreciate everything I have. And I finally define success for myself rather than everybody else looking at me and deciding what success means for me.
I love that. And I want to put a pin in that because we'll come back to that.
Okay.
But before we talk about how would you define, so I did some research. We were chatting beforehand, and I appreciate the compliment you said about the amount of research that I put in. Because I really do. I value and respect the people, and this is a way of my honoring them. But let's talk about in October 1994, you were on the poster for NCIS Bulletin. My question for you, with the glorious mustache, was that mustache standard issue? Was that part of the NCIS starter kit?
Certainly looked like it, didn't it? Along, with that came the issue. If you remember watching police shows back there, everybody had
Yeah,
Ray-Ban sunglasses on,
yeah.
right? Yeah, I think they forced me to grow that mustache, and I was required to wear the sunglasses. So, but yeah, that's funny you bring up that picture. It was I got teased a lot about that.
And even to this day, you probably thought, "Hey, I was young, I was naive," and it's no. 30 years later, you're still. That's awesome. That's great, I love that you said about the police shows because I loved watching police shows back in. I'm 42 years old. I'll be 43 in a couple weeks, but or here in November. But either way, being 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, I used to watch police shows with my parents. And I remember, well, there was NYPD Blue or any other police show back then, but the bushy mustache felt like was a staple or character description for every single person on those shows. Hey, going back to the magazine cover, how did that come about? How does that start? Or yeah.
Cover on NCIS
Yeah, because that seemed like a really cool opportunity. Yeah. So what's the story behind that?
was it's kind of not as exciting as you think, but it was happenstance. I was working at NCIS headquarters at the time. I had transferred from being an agent in Honolulu, Hawaii, and
Mm,
I was, as we would call it, riding the fraud desk up in Washington at the Navy Yard. And NCIS had old wheeled guns. If you're familiar in the term wheel guns, they were revolvers. We were still
okay.
using Rugers at the time, and so the organization decided we're going to switch to a semi-automatic, and they went with a Sig Sauer. And I just happened to be at headquarters, and somebody who was doing the publicity for it said, "Hey, Dave, we need a photo of someone holding the the Sig Sauer." And I was a firearms instructor, so it was natural for me to go out there and hold it properly and not make a fool of myself, at least
Yeah.
holding the gun. But the mustache still, I still got teased about the mustache.
No, that's great. That's one of the best things about the military. It's just the camaraderie and the form of making fun of your friends. I think,
Mm-hmm.
and it's those things, and it's probably you probably still know people like you said to this day they're never going to let you live that down. They're going to talk. You have all these accomplishments that you've done, all these milestones. Yeah, but you had that remember that mustache you had. The Magnum PI was jealous.
Yeah, yeah, I still get it. I still am in contact with a lot of my friends from NCIS, and yep, they still say, "But remember when,
Yeah,
you volunteered to be the poster boy on the NCIS magazine?" And you know what? I look back at it now, and it's a great thing. I have something to look back at and say, "Look, what another thing I did that I had no intention of doing. I certainly wasn't a model to be able to go out there
yeah.
and pose." And it turned out good. Look, we get to, and now all these years later, we get to talk about it.
It's a conversation starter at a party. Like, hey, let's talk about this mustache. It's glorious.
Mhm.
Hey, you mentioned that you were previously before DC. What'd you call it? The frog desk?
FRAUD.
Oh, fraud. Okay. Yeah. So before your time working the fraud desk, you said you worked in Honolulu. What was the tempo like out there in Hawaii in terms for NCIS? Were you pretty busy with crimes and investigations and the sort?
Very busy. Those are some of the biggest cases that I worked with NCIS were in Honolulu. I was specifically going after Fortune 500 companies who were defrauding the Navy. And I was successful. I did a lot of undercover worked sources out in town, and caught a lot of bad guys, put a couple people in jail. And putting people in jail for fraud work is not easy.
Man, what a crazy time. I mean, even you talked about companies trying to fraud the government. That's a pretty bold move. Actually makes me think of when I was researching you, I came across a post you made referencing Albert Einstein, and I've always been really fascinated by Albert Einstein. And of course, I think everyone should have to learn about him. And it was cool seeing him portrayed in Oppenheimer and all that. But anyway, a post you made was a quote he had, and the quote is: "A clever person solves a problem, a wise person avoids it." What about that quote stands out to you or stood out to you for the first time?
Been through, I can't even count the number of training sessions and hours of training in management and leadership for the federal government. I was a senior executive when I retired, and every training that we went to seemed to be people trying to solve whatever problem was at their organization. And it took up hours, days, years even of time and effort to try to solve problems when if they would have just sat back and looked at it, they could have avoided it, all the man hours and all the problems to begin with, if they had just looked at the base of it instead of trying to get to the end of it, if that makes any sense. Because
Yeah.
the beginning of a problem and all the way to the end, there's a lot going on. And I think managers, and when we talk about leaders, I really dislike the word leader as a noun. I always look at it as a verb. I hate the title leadership because leadership is something that is done by example. And so true leadership is I think, is avoiding a problem, then putting throwing people, as far as man hours and effort, into trying to solve something you could have had foresight and thought and avoided it to begin with. So that's why when I read that quote, I said, boy, how many man hours and how many more problems could I have solved by just sidestepping the issue and going around it?
Has that quote shaped the way you define the word success or the mindset you have regarding success?
I don't know that that defines what I view as success, because that quote was, I just came up with it recently, and it was more of a looking back on it. Success was I would say, a major hurdle for me to understand and identify, because success, could never reach it. I became a Navy SEAL. I was an NCIS agent. I was an EPA agent. I was a Department of Interior agent. I retired. I should have been successful, right? I should have felt great. I should have been out fishing. And
Yeah.
I look back and I always felt like, man, I never felt the success that I really should have through all my achievements. And it wasn't until I changed my perspective as to what success is for me that now I feel completely successful, because I'm not judging myself by what other people perceive of me.
What's your advice then? Because just researching you and everything you've accomplished, and we'll get to the book, and I have some topics specific about the book, but I'm very interested because that's a lesson that everyone, I think, needs to learn. Because when I was reading about you, it seems like you've become an expert at filtering out the noise. How do you filter out the noise and just ignore the doubters and focus on your specific task on hand?
It's a simple question with a very complex answer. And I needed to research myself, because everybody's different. And we got to start this conversation here, because there's no such thing as a list of 5 things to do that will work for me and will work for you. I just don't believe in that. And it's just simply not true, because everybody is genetically different, and we all have different talents. We all have different inherent abilities. And I am very lucky in the fact that I naturally do it. I am not dissuaded by other people's criticism. I didn't, even as a little kid, if you look, my book is all about, the beginning of it is trying to explain why I became the person I became. And I had these talents that were inherent to me. My ancestors gave them to me. It was in my blood. So for me, it was easy. Not everybody has that ability. Some people, if they get a criticism, it crushes their confidence, puts them back on their heels. But for me, it was a motivator. And when somebody said I couldn't do something, that made me want to do it even more. And so for me, it wasn't difficult. But I don't want to say that for everybody, because I know that is one of the biggest hurdles for a lot of people. They cannot handle criticism. And I'm not criticizing them for not being able to handle it. I'm just saying it's natural. Yeah. And so they need to understand that and then work through it. So hopefully I answered the question. I'm not sure.
That's great. And I like that you said it's a simple question, but complex answer. You're right. Do you think if people had given you constant positive affirmations and support, maybe you would not have achieved what you have achieved? Because it sounds like all the criticisms and the doubters or people you can't do it, it ignited something in you. And the tenacity is the word I get when I think about you. It just instantly, it screams tenacity. But yeah, how do you think everything would have worked out? Like, you know what, David, you're the best. You're the number one cadet. You're the number one SEAL. How do you think that would have framed your outlook and your achievements?
While it gave me a boost, I have, in my research, I came up with a psychologist, Robert Hill, who coined a term, pathological persistence. And I feel like I fall into that category. So it wasn't my parents. It wasn't my environment. It was genetic for me to be pathologically persistent. And I would have pursued the things I pursued regardless of my situation. And I still do it today. I am bred to be like this. I can't help it. It's almost to the fact that I'm over persistent. It's almost to the, ADD kind of, OCD rather, OCD
Yeah.
compulsive, that I have to keep pushing forward. I have to keep, and what gave me pause after I retired is I had to understand that is who I was, and that I'm a person who enjoys the journey more so than the destination. So now I love the journey. Before, it was always about I needed to get to the end, I needed to get the resolution, I needed to get the certificate, and now I'm enjoying the journey, and that's why I'm so happy.
Whenever you're about to take on your next challenging endeavor, or anytime you're faced with some type of big obstacle, do you have like a go-to phrase or saying, or maybe was there like a moment going back to your childhood that pops up every single time and just instantly encourage you to tackle the problem head on?
It happened.
Ooh.
That's what I always make. I'm going to make it happen. And regardless of what obstacles are in front of me, I say to myself, I'm just going to make it happen. And I find a way no matter what. And that really played out a lot in going through SEAL training. And because I was this way before SEAL training, I would have never made it through had I not had the experiences that I did as a kid.
I want to leverage that, your experiences as a kid and going into SEAL training, just transitioning to your book. In what ways does and Goliath use experiences to convey broader messages about overcoming obstacles and achieving greatness despite one size or initial limitations?
I'm not sure I understood the question. Ask me that again.
So yeah, just in what ways has your book used your personal experiences to convey broader messages about overcoming obstacles and achieving greatness despite one size or any type of initial limitations?
That's the beautiful thing about, at least I think, the way I wrote the book was I had a collection of events in my life that were very critical. At least I felt that they were, in telling a story, a good story, somebody would want to actually read. And then I wanted to lace into that story the meaning behind each story, and the things both that were good and I don't want to say, I don't use the word failure because I don't have it in my vocabulary. Yeah. I think it's failure is a word that means you did not succeed in any way, shape, or form. And I think every time you try something difficult and you don't accomplish it, that you are succeeding to the next step in meeting your goal. So failure is not in my vocabulary. So in the book, each one of these stories is either a success or a setback, and how I go around it, or to my fault even, did not celebrate my own successes. And that's something we got to, I want to, if I have one of the lessons of the book is, man, as the old saying, stop and smell the roses every once in a while. And it's great that I'm persistent, but at sometimes it could be to your detriment. So stop and smell the roses.
I'm writing down what you said. Stop and smell the roses. I'm writing that down because I actually had a follow-up question: is what lessons can readers take away from your story? But I think the stop and smell the roses that's such an important lesson, especially in our world today where everything is so instantaneous and things are just moving so fast. I heard a quote recently where tomorrow quickly becomes yesterday. Yeah, so I love what you just said. That's great. Yeah, stop and smell the roses.
There's a saying in BUDS, Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training. It's the only easy day was yesterday. And
I think I read that. Yeah.
That has a lot of meaning, and you can read into it what you'd like. But that is a way to push yourself forward, I think. And but at the same time, the only easy day may have been yesterday, but for God's sakes, how about enjoying a little something today that you did yesterday.
No, that's good. Hey, in your eyes, who is your David? Who is the most tenacious person in your life?
Um, you know, I I've been asked a couple times, who were my mentors and who is this? Who did I look up to? And to be honest, I was a fan of Jacques Cousteau,
Oh,
and I studied, and because of what he did and his love of the ocean and his just being underwater and the way he explored, it really it brought out the creativity in me, and so I don't know about being tenacious, but he was somebody I looked up to and I wanted to be like, and
yeah.
and that's pushed me forward to the occupation I went into eventually.
Is there a person? Is there someone in your personal life that you would also consider your Jacques Cousteau, um, or someone whose creativity that you admire?
McRaven.
Oh my gosh! So did he write? I saw. So I'm still reading your book, and but I couldn't wait to do this interview, and I wanted. So typically I do finish the books before I do the interviews, but I was just jumped at the chance, and I knew I didn't want to have to. It was either now or like December, and I can't wait. I got to talk to this guy. Um, but I saw that he wrote, something about your book. How did that happen, or how did that come about, and what is your relationship with him?
We both served at SEAL Team 4 together, and I was in between platoons, and Bill McRaven came up to me and said, "Hey, you want to go to South America with the platoon I'm forming?" He was a lieutenant at the time. And I said, yeah, great, let's do it. Central and South America. So we spent about 9 months together training, a couple months pre-training, and then 6 months deployed together. And I was a young punk. I was 20 years old. I didn't know nothing from nothing. And here I got this guy who's hard charging, but he could just bring out the best in everyone in the platoon. We did things that other platoons never couldn't even think of doing, and we had so much fun doing it. I look back on that time now, and so many lessons I learned and how he treated people. I learned a lot how to do that, because it's not he was a lieutenant, he was the officer in charge, but he treated everyone differently, and and it played to their personality. It didn't ask for respect, but he earned the respect of the entire platoon.
I love his book, Make Your Bed. It's such a quick read. But one of the things that resonated with me through the book is just the overall humility. Because he talked about during SEAL training, where they would have the boat races, and they would have basically all the tall people in one boat, and then all the short people, they called them flippers or the Smurf boat.
Smurfs,
yeah, Smurfs. But it was always the Smurfs that would win the races. But it's such a great lesson about humility. With that, what would you consider during your time your greatest lesson in humility?
Greatest lesson in humility. That's a tough one. There's been a lot of times in my career where you have an opportunity, as for instance, when I was a special agent in charge, I was responsible for every investigation that was being conducted, and we had some really big successes. And to be able to take those successes and promote your people before yourself is probably the biggest lesson I think any leader should learn, is that when you have a team success, it's not the leader, it's the people working under you that make it happen. And that is, I think, when you bring people on, hire them, and join your team, I think that's the first thing you should tell them is, my job is to make sure that I make sure that you have the ability to take my place in the future. So my job is to train you to be in charge of whatever the title is going to be. And if one day you become the special agent in charge, I will feel like I've done my job.
No, that's awesome. I love it. Going back to the book, what role does the concept of self-belief play in the journey throughout the book?
Self-belief is confidence right there. And confidence is something that needs to be explored with right from the very beginning with children. I mean, I say this you have to give kids an opportunity to fail or not get a trophy, if you will.
Yeah.
Not everybody can win. Not everybody can win every game or match. And so if kids don't learn how to deal with defeat, then they will never have confidence in themselves, because after the defeat, what happens? There's another opportunity to win. And so
Yeah.
they're going to get that feeling of how bad it feels to lose, and they're going to never want that feeling again. And that's what's going to build confidence in people, in the kids. And that's what I talk about a lot in my book, is that my confidence was developed at a very early age. I think a lot of it was hereditary, that I had confidence in me. But if I didn't get in the
Yeah.
fights that I had, and I didn't lose in certain situations, when it came to really having a difficult time to push forward in BUD/S training or being a SEAL, then I would have never been able to go through and do what I did.
No, that's great, because I do think there's a difference, to your point. Like, there's a difference between failing and being a failure. A failure would just be, quit. But there's times where people fail all the time. You just got to keep trying and get better, and eventually achieve success. Just your thoughts made me think about when I was 10 years old. I played baseball religiously as a kid, and I was a pretty good baseball player. But I remember the first game of the season that year, we played kind of like an all-star team. They beat my team 30-1. And afterward, they were called the Cash Sox, SOX, right? And after the game, they gave my team like Gatorades or whatever drinks. And I was walking out with my stepdad back to the car, and I was like, "Oh, that team was really nice, man. That was awesome." He's like, "You should be ashamed of yourself. You guys just got your butts kicked and lost 30-1." Like, and that stuck with me. And one of those things where I started practicing more after that. And I don't know, it's just one of those core childhood memories that has always stuck with me. But I want to go back to, I like what you were talking about, all the interactions that you had. But yeah, how important, or how does this belief impact interactions with others and impact the challenges other people face?
Missed the first part.
So just basically, how does you talked about self-belief and confidence and those interactions? How does disbelief impact interactions with others and the challenges faced?
Well, interaction with others. Number one, confidence is contagious. And so, if we were talking about leadership and management, which is two different things, but you would hope your managers are leading. But if you have confidence as a person in charge, then I think that absolutely is passed on to your people. There have been many times that I was working for someone who didn't come out and show us, let's just say, show us as the worker bees how to do a particular thing. And there was no example. There's nobody setting an example as to how we should be. And when you have, and you know how personalities are, everybody is going to default for their own personalities if they're not led by example. And that can lead to really bad things. So for me, if I walk out in front of my people, I am going to display number one, my confidence. And then I'm going to pass that on to them and saying, this is why you should be confident in this. I'm not going to use those words, of course, but this is what I'm going to say to them. This is how we're going to get this done. And it's going to happen. And we're going to be this and we're going to be that. And then you put that thought in their mind. And I'm telling you, that positive thinking is the difference between when they get in this situation, because it's not going to be easy. If any, look,
Yeah.
nothing worth having is easily obtained. So you're going to get the results. You are going to get the results that you're looking for if you lead by example and with a positive attitude.
I love that. That's going to be a clippable moment for sure. Hey, I was thinking about this too, because I love your mindset, and it's just very evident. Again, I keep mentioning about just the research I've done about you. To achieve everything that you have, there has to be a little bit of craziness inherent to you. What is something you believe to be true, but other people might think is crazy? And it could be anything.
Believe to be true.
And I think this, when I say all this, like craziness inherent within you, as a good thing, as a compliment, because I think, or, bold, or just, yeah.
Well, I've believed a lot of different things in my life that I proved were not true. And I am, and when you say crazy, if I don't know how far you got in my book, but one of the stories was when I was a kid, I used to have dreams about flying. And it's actually, I did some research and found out that, yeah, it's actually true. You can, or a lot of kids have dreams about flying. So, but in my personality is I take it to the next level and I try to make it happen. So when I was a kid, I cut out some cardboard wings and thought I was going to fly. Jumped off the back wall, the garden wall at our house, and of course landed on my face. One of the things I said was, while I was persistent and I was certainly going to try to make it happen, as I said, common sense was not one of my strong suits when I was a kid. So I've learned a lot since then. But here's the thing. I still am like that. There's things I don't talk about in the book, that I was a semi-professional wakeboarder. I was barefoot. I was on ski teams, demonstration ski teams. I don't know that I have limits. So I think if you want to talk about crazy, realistically, I look at anything and everything as a possibility. So no, when I say that and people are like, oh, well, no, there are limitations to everyone. I know that. I just don't see them for myself.
So I did actually read that in your book, and that's why you kind of used that as a launching point for the question. I wanted to kind of see like how that would come about organically. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And again, it's just more quotable stuff. I've been writing down a lot of notes on you as you're speaking. You got some gems. So I'm a huge basketball fan, the NBA specifically. And Spud Webb, I think he was 5'8", used to dunk basketballs, and at one time people thought he couldn't do it. And then Nate Robinson was a more recent player, same thing, 5'7". They list him at 5'9", but it's basketball players lie about their height all the time, so he's probably 5'7" or 5'8". But again, like, they're dunking basketballs, and it just shows that anything is possible with their mindset. I have a couple lighter questions. Are you good on time? Are you in a rush or anything?
All yours for as long as you have me.
Awesome. How did the nickname Brownie come about, or is it just a play on your last name?
I think it's a combination. The story is that, again, I thought I could do anything when I was in ninth grade. I tried out for the football team, and at 80 pounds, going up against kids who are 150, 200 pounds, physics takes hold of you, and you get run over and knocked down. And one of the football drills, the coach looks at me and he's just said, "Brownie, get in." And that was it. That ever since then, that name has followed me through football. And I didn't know whether it was Brownie, like the little chocolate fudge brownie, or like not yet a Girl Scout kind of situation. But, even when I was in the teams, it's not like I went into the SEAL teams and like said, "Hey, my nickname's Brownie." It just naturally happened. And that probably came from both my size and my last name. So it was an easy nickname to start.
Was there ever a time that you used your height to your advantage, whether it's to lay low, if the lead SEAL instructors or anyone's looking for you, you're like, man, let me just hide real quick? Was there any maybe a funny story about when you leveraged your height to very easily blend in with surroundings?
When I was going through SEAL training, I was obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, I was the smallest person by a few inches, and certainly by total pounds. I started training at 5'3", 110, and I probably
Yeah.
stayed around that the entire time I was in training. And so I get through first phase, and I'm in like the first day of second phase. I had an instructor come up to me, and we were on the grinder, which is the place where we did all of our exercises, and stood over my head as I was doing flutter kicks exercises. And he looked down at me. He said, and he saw my name on my shirt. He said, "Brown, who the hell are you? I haven't seen you before. What, did you just sneak in here? You could not have been in this class up until this point, and I didn't see you." And so then he made me get up and hit the surf and come back and do push-ups and everything. So I thought for sure I was going to get tagged, and now I was going to be the guy that they were constantly going to harass and everything. But that was an example of me being so small. I think a lot of instructors kind of, because I kind of blended in when you couldn't actually see me when I was surrounded by the bigger guys. But I think it's more than a harassment. I think it was an acknowledgement at the time that, hey, dude, you made it. You're in second phase now. And a lot of guys that were bigger than you didn't make it. So I think it was kind of a pat on the back more so than a punishment.
That's fantastic. I love that story. Did you ever have to roll around in the sand? Is that what they call it, the sand cookies or the sugar cookies or something? Or after being in the surf?
Yeah, unfortunately for me, I was a terrible runner in first phase, and I was constantly in the goon squad. That means if you didn't keep up with the rest of the runners, they pulled you aside, and then they made you go hit the surf and roll around in the sand and do all kinds of exercises, usually till you collapsed or until you were, there was nobody left, and then they, made you run back or get in the ambulance, and they took you back if you couldn't do it. So
yeah,
unfortunately,
wow.
yeah, and that was, there's a story in the book about that significant time where I decided I wasn't going to be in the goon squad anymore.
Would you consider that like do you mind just kind of expanding upon that? I call it the aha moment. Yeah. Or your epiphany.
Yes. Yeah. That single moment was a turning point in my entire life. And I look back at it now and I still feel it's the same way. And a lot of guys in buds, I'm sure everyone in buds goes through that at one point in where they make the decision, like I made the decision, that nothing was going to stop me from that point on, and I would rather die than not accomplish the mission. And then we were running back from on a conditioning run, and I was getting ready to be in the goon squad. And just a couple of days before, I was in the goon squad, and I had to carry Guma Tau Tau, one of my classmates, a 230-pound guy, up and over the berm. And I still to this day, I don't know how to do it. It's kind of like, the superpower that you have that lift the bus off somebody when it falls. So I carried Guma Tau Tau, and we won the race. And here I am back in the goon squad 2 days later. And I thought, I'm not going to make it. This is it. I can't go through another goon squad. I can't carry Guma Tau Tau again. And my mind was telling me, you're done. You're done. You're not going to make it. I started failing. My run started slowing down, and I had to change my perspective of the world in 1 second, and I did. And I said, "That's it. This isn't going to stop me. Nothing's ever going to stop me again." And I claim, and I still say to this day, I had an out-of-body experience, because I looked at myself from above, and I was just like, I don't feel a thing. I'm not tired anymore. I don't feel any pain. And I started sprinting. It never happened before. Sprinted right up, caught up with everybody. And I looked back, and I didn't even recognize myself. I said, how the heck did I do that? And from that moment on, I realized that pain is a perception. Physical limitations are set up here. And if you accept what your mind's telling you, you can only do this, then that's all you can do. You have to get beyond that. You have to get beyond your mental barriers. And that accounts for anything, whether it's running in soft sand, or whether it's you trying to make the grade in school, or whether it's you trying to get the promotion at work, because if you're not working hard enough, you're not going to get it. Those are all the things that changed my life to go forward. And that's why I reached the highest levels of the federal government, because that was my perspective. I will die trying before I fail.
I'm just taking a lot of notes for myself later. That's a great name for a rap album too. I will die trying before I fail.
But you can't just say it. You can't just say it. You have to mean it. And that's you have to mean it. That's good. I should I'm going to write a book off this podcast episode. You're having some gems. You have to. And this is great. I'm not going to criticize other people's philosophies, but looking at a list and saying, I'm going to get up every morning and I'm going to write 5 things down that I'm going to do today. And people write the 5 things and they put it on their desk and they walk away. And they never do them because they didn't accept the fact of what's not going to happen, how they're going to feel about themselves, how are they going to progress in life. I mean, it's the old shopping cart thing at the grocery store, right? Who doesn't put their shopping cart back, right? I mean, if you don't pay attention to the little details in life, you're never going to get to the grand things that you're trying to do. It's the little details all stacked up that equal success.
Going, like, when I ask you, like, what's the crazy thing you know to be true? Like, for me, I feel like you can judge people simply on whether or not they put the shopping cart back in the cart section or whatever outside. Right. It drives me nuts when I see people just leaving them out in the middle of the parking lot or hopped up on some curb. I'm like, no. But
yeah, that
I have a few Go ahead.
It says a lot about a person, I think.
Yeah. Also, my daughter actually got me doing something too. Whenever we find a penny on the ground, if the penny is tails up, she won't pick it up and put it in her pocket. She flips it over for heads up so someone else can find it later on. And she believes it's good karma, and just it's a way to give good luck to other people. And I love that. So I've actually started doing that. Yeah, just simple things we can do, right?
Yeah, that's great.
A few minutes. Yeah, I love it. And she's 12 and she inspires me. I have a few miscellaneous questions. One is I ask at the end of every episode, but I'll get to that. But my questions are just kind of random, miscellaneous, no really rhyme or reason. But when you think of a movie image that depicts leadership, who or what comes to mind?
Movie ending.
A movie image. So movie image. So like a very common one, for example, would be Patton or George C. Scott, right? I guess, like standing in front of the American flag as Patton, but it could be anything.
Well,
it's a civilian movie too. So it doesn't have to be a military movie.
For me, it's John Wayne in The Cowboys.
Oh yeah.
Where he, stands up to the bully at the end and he risks his life. And he actually ends up shooting him, but that whole movie was so exciting for me. He took all these kids and brought them up in a way and they learned their lessons to be men. And he was there willing to give his own life to protect them. And there's no better leadership than that.
That's good. I'm writing that down. I love John Wayne. I watched so many of his movies growing up. So that's awesome. All right. If there was a giant billboard with your picture on it and message for the world to see, what would you want that billboard to say? And where would you want that billboard to be?
I want it to say, live your biggest life. And I want it to only be one place, or can it be in a...
yeah, I mean, wherever. Yeah, I mean, like some people, you can say the internet or something. Yeah, so I mean, just however creative you want to get.
Where would it be is the hard part. I know what I want to say. I'd love to get the message to everyone. And so, you know what? I think it would be on every time you turn on your computer. When it boots up, that's where it is.
That's good.
because that's everybody lives. Or on your phone, even that's even better. Every time you pick up your
Yeah.
phone, the screen says "Live your biggest life."
No, it's good. That's man. I want to show you my notes again. I got. I don't know how much you can see. I'm just scribbling, and I'm trying to like be respectful as I'm talking, but like I'm writing down without looking. But man, there are a lot of gems, a lot of stuff to work with here. So I'm excited about when I get the opportunity to edit all this. All right, final two questions. What do you want people to know about your book and Goliath?
I want them to know, and I think takeaway is basically the same kind of a theme on that. What I'd like for them to take away is that you need to live. I think everyone needs to stop and smell the roses and live every day for the fullest. Understand, play to your strengths, but mitigate your weaknesses, and that you need to take care of yourself first. And that's something I didn't do for many, many years. As I helped people into the lifeboat many times, I never thought about grabbing the boat myself, getting into the lifeboat first, and then helping people in. You can help way more people when you're taking care of yourself than you are pushing from behind. So, the story is not what most people think. They think it's a military memoir. And while that's the backdrop, that's only a very small fraction of the story. It's really a take on how one person can live their life and be super successful and yet miss out on so much only because of perspective. So yes, I did a lot of great things, and I think I've accomplished a lot, but I just didn't recognize it. And now I can. I wish I would have had this forethought when I was much younger, when I graduated from boot camp and I celebrated becoming a SEAL and all the great things that people celebrate in their lives. Now I can go back and look at it. I wish I did it before, but back to the smell the roses, right? Enjoy your life. That's really the central theme. Enjoy your life and work your butt off to be the person that you can be, because it doesn't develop on its own. You have to work at it to be a good person.
That is such an incredible answer. I don't want to ask any more questions just because that is just that is a perfect ending. Did you have any parting thoughts or any other parting shots that you want to?
No, I think we covered a lot. There's I'm really really happy with your questions and your
Thank you.
perspective, and the way you approach an interview is very thoughtful, and I appreciate that. I can't say everybody has your level of detail and the respect for the people that they come on the show. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I can't tell you that's you're really just hitting home right now. Um, I'm thank you. I'm not the best at expressing gratitude or showing gratitude, but man, that really might be one of the best compliments I've received in a long, long time. So thank you, sir. That means sincerely a large deal to me. So man, I'm humbled by that.
Well deserved.
Man, thank you.